Iran's president is dead. But has he been assassinated? The fact is that last Sunday, the helicopter in which he was traveling had an accident under strange circumstances. So let me ask you, doesn't this all sound a bit familiar? Indeed, Yevgeny Prigozhin, the leader of the Wagner Group turned Putin's nemesis, died in very similar circumstances. Aircraft crashes have become the leitmotif of the bizarre deaths among the major geopolitical players. Accident or macabre plan? Whatever the case, when Prigozhin died, the accusations focused on Putin, and now, with the fall of the Iranian president, many people are pointing to a possible culprit: Benjamin Netanyahu. I don't think I need to stress too much that if there is one thing that has been setting the international agenda in recent months, it has been the constant bickering between Iran and Israel. And take note, because I am not only talking about posturing airstrikes, such as that missile launched by Iran, which was announced all over the place. I'm talking about a much larger conflict in which proxy groups have played a fundamental role. Hamas, Hezbollah, the Houthis, the Palestinian Islamic Jihad. In short, an innumerable group of organizations controlled or supported by Iran that have become a huge headache for Israel. So knowing all this, all the pieces fit together. If Israel kills the president, then it could unleash internal power struggles, topple the command, and ultimately seriously destabilize its worst enemy, right? Well, let's not go so fast, because if everything were so simple, we would see helicopter accidents every day. Here at least, we have to take two things into account. The first is, did Israel really have the capacity to assassinate the Iranian leader? And the second is, does this outcome really benefit them? Well, let's take a look. We all know that the Israelis have military technology unmatched by even the Doomslayer himself, and also intelligence services that 007 would struggle to outwit. What seems to be clear is that the helicopter was not hit by a missile, nor by a drone, nor by any other offensive device. Had it been an attack, it would most likely have been a sabotage operation. Well, according to some theories that are circulating through various networks, it could have been a missile that no one saw because the day of the event was foggier than Silent Hill. The problem is that radar and infrared systems are immune to this problem, and no one saw anything. Which, by the way, leads us to a much simpler possible explanation. The flying conditions were so bad that the trip itself was reckless. But let's go back to the theory of a surface-to-air missile. Sounds simple, doesn't it? Mossad places an effective one on the ground that fires at the helicopter as it approaches. Well, the problem is that this theory also has more holes in it than a Swiss cheese. First, the troops on the ground would have had trouble detecting the helicopter. And secondly, we have to take into account that there were not one, but 3 helicopters flying in the presidential convoy. This is very common in the highest echelons of power. You will always see that, in general, leaders like Biden travel in groups of several vehicles identical to each other. And you may ask, why? Well, because if an attacker wants to assassinate the president, since all the vehicles are identical, he or she cannot know in which one exactly the target is traveling. In other words, to ensure the strike, you have to destroy them all. And believe me, if destroying one armed vehicle is already difficult in itself, destroying several of them is almost mission impossible. Well, in this case, something like that happened with the helicopters of the Iranian presidential convoy. So, where is the problem? The problem is that the helicopter of Ibrahim Raisi, the deceased president, was the only one of the 3 that went down. Or to put it another way, if Israel or any other attacker wanted to assassinate the president, it was very, very lucky to guess the right helicopter. Even more so in an environment with no visibility and being miles away from the target. And if we add to that the fact that no offensive artifacts have been detected, everything points to a clear conclusion. Ibrahim Raisi was not killed. The helicopter had an accident caused by the fog. Wait a minute though, because I know what you're thinking. Prigozhin. What we are seeing now seems like deja vu of the former leader of Wagner's crash. In his case, no missile, drone, or apparent attack was sighted either. What we did learn, thanks to leaks from a Russian official, is that Prigozhin was probably killed by a small bomb placed under the wing of his Embraer Legacy 600. What does this mean? It means that there was an infiltrator, a Russian agent among their ranks, who orchestrated the attack from the ground. And something very similar could have happened now with the case of the Iranian president. Of course, this is not proof of anything, What's more, keep in mind that Prigozhin was killed in Russia, where the Kremlin could easily infiltrate its men. And in the case of Iran, Israel's forces would have had it much more difficult. Israel would have to have an undercover operative at the highest level, with access to the presidential convoy's helicopters. On top of that, it would have to know in advance exactly which helicopter the president was going to use. And that in a country in a state of almost total alert, with threats from Israel and also in recent months from ISIS, is not easy. There is a slight possibility that this could be the case, but the truth is that it seems to be a rather weak hypothesis, at least with the information we have for now. VisualPolitik community, the Iranians are not that disastrous. In any case, and beyond the conspiracy theories, there is one question, perhaps the most important question, that no one is asking, and that is significant. Is Israel really going to benefit from the death of Ibrahim Raisi? I mean, yes, the president of Iran is dead, but what does that imply? Is it going to have consequences for the war in Gaza, or for international power relations? Well, at first glance, not as much as it might seem. The presidential figure in Iran is like a sports director with Florentino Perez. He's in charge, but not so much. In the end, he's always subordinate to the big boss, who in this case is Ayatollah Khamenei. Nor does he have control over the Revolutionary Guard or the intelligence services. In Iran, the president is basically dedicated to executing national policy and always following the directives of the supreme leader. And since the supreme leader has not changed, and neither have the top brass of the Revolutionary Guard and the intelligence services, it does not look like things are going to change much. In other words, if Israel had wanted to behead its enemy, it would have been aiming at the wrong target. But then, what could Israel gain by removing Ibrahim Raisi? Is there really a motive to justify a possible assassination? Besides that, what if I told you that the Iranian system itself could be behind this whole story? Yes, the Iranians themselves assassinating their president. But why? Well, let's take a look at it. Before we go with the biggest plot twist of this video, let's ask the one key question we haven't answered yet. Who was Ibrahim Raisi? What power did he have? Who might want him out of the way, and for what reason? Well, Ibrahim Raisi had not only been president since 2021, but he was also known as the Butcher of Tehran. We are talking about a guy from the harsh wing of the regime, accused of violating human rights, of committing war crimes, of repressing demonstrators, and basically of all the atrocities you can imagine. What's more, do you remember the demonstrations against the Iranian government where women cut their hair because of the repression and killings by the morality police? Indeed, Ibrahim Raisi was right there running the show. After all, Raisi was the president. He was the one who appointed the ministers. He was the one who directed the country's economy, and he was the one who represented the country internationally. Nevertheless, as we've already said, he was always following the path laid out by Ayatollah Khamenei. Here's a curious fact. The presidential figure in Iran is chosen in elections, but white label elections, where the great leader censures any uncomfortable candidate. For example, in the last election, Ayatollah Khamenei directed the process to ensure that his puppet, Ibrahim Raisi, was the winner. That is, he placed his puppet in the government, perhaps to make him known, to give him more power, to thank him for his services, or to clean up his image. So you see, Raisi was hardly a model leader, and was part of a corrupt system. But beyond his crimes against humanity, really, as I said before, Israel has not gained much from his loss. And keep in mind, it's no longer that we say so, it's that the former Israeli defense minister, Avigdor Lieberman, says so.
President Raisi was a cruel man, and we certainly will not shed a tear for him, but Iran's policy against Israel will not change, as it is determined by Khamenei.
After his death, nothing seems to have changed in the relations between the two countries. Now, what if the real target of the attack was not the president? What if we've been looking at the wrong victim? Hossein Amir Abdollahian, Tehran's foreign minister, was also on board the crashed helicopter. In recent years, Hossein has been an important link between the Ayatollah regime and proxy armies such as Hamas or Hezbollah. Specifically, some analysts have pointed to him as a close friend of Hezbollah leader Hassan Nasrallah. We are talking about someone who could be of great help in the network of alliances of terrorist groups that systematically attack and threaten Israel. Although, once again, here we have very similar problems in linking the accident to Israel. There is no weapon. The helicopter was far away from the Israeli border. Hitting the target would have been complicated, and sabotage does not seem very likely either. What's more, the former vice president has already taken the place of the late Raisi, and the deputy foreign minister has taken Hussein's place. In other words, the people have changed, but not the ideas. The new substitute government will be in place for up to 50 days. Then there will be elections, in which, don't doubt for a second, Ayatollah Khamenei will be in charge of paving the way for a new puppet, and most likely everything will continue as before. As you can see, no murder weapon, no motive. Nothing seems to point to Israeli authorship in this incident, except that, and this is a completely alternative theory that is not in the media, Raisi was in the running to succeed Khamenei as supreme leader. That, at least, is what was taken for granted behind the scenes. Well, it's possible that for some reason, perhaps because of his radicalism or hostility, neither the United States nor Israel wanted to risk Raisi becoming the new supreme leader. Getting him out of the way before then would be a masterstroke. So then, we would have a motive, but we still wouldn't have the weapon. Now, a moment ago, we promised you a plot twist. Another one. A twist that no one expects, because what if it had been Iran's own power system that had beheaded its own president? Think about it. Who had access to possibly place a bomb in the president's helicopter? Indeed, someone trusted by the Iranian government. It would be the same as Putin did with Prigozhin, but the Middle Eastern version. The question is, why? What could the Ayatollahs gain by getting rid of their puppet in the presidency? Well, let's take a look.
A proxy war?
As we have told you, the ruler of Iran is Ayatollah Khamenei. But what exactly is an Ayatollah? Basically, he's a high-ranking Shiite cleric in Islam. In other words, he would be something like a cardinal of the Catholic Church, but in the Shiite organizational structure. Now, just as not all cardinals become pope, not all Ayatollahs are supreme leaders of Iran. What's more, you don't even have to be an Ayatollah to become Iran's supreme leader. When Ayatollah Khamenei himself was elected as the supreme leader, he was not yet an Ayatollah. He was a Hojatollah. That is a lower rank, but also an important one. According to the constitution, the only thing that is required in order to accede to the leadership of the country is 1. To have an extensive religious background, 2. To be a respected figure in Islam, and 3. To have leadership skills. With all these requirements fulfilled, an assembly of experts made up of high-ranking clerics and elected by popular vote chooses the new supreme leader. After that, the chosen man rules Iran until his death, until his abdication, or until a removal, should the assembly determine that he is not fulfilling his duties. And you may be wondering, but what does all this have to do with the possible assassination of President Raisi? Well, think about it. The current Ayatollah Khamenei is quite old, 85 years old, and in poor health. In other words, he does not have long to live. After his death, the Council of Wise Men will choose a successor. Now let me ask you, who do you think was the leading candidate to fill his position? Indeed, the recently deceased Ibrahim Raisi. Ibrahim Raisi was not only the president, but he was also a religious figure with the title of Hajjat Seliman. Besides that, if you look closely, you will see that Raisi always wore a black turban. In Islamic culture, this means that he belongs to the Sayyid, that is, the descendants of the Prophet Muhammad, which incidentally also includes the current leader, Khamenei. The point is that Raisi met all the necessary conditions for becoming the next supreme leader. He was religious, a loyal follower of the current leader, and already had experience in government. To which you may ask, then why would his own friends want to kill him? A new theory emerges here, which points to the son of Ayatollah Khamenei as the perpetrator of the attack, Mojtaba Khamenei. If we were to define Mojtaba in this theory, the perfect example would be Emperor Commodus from the movie Gladiator. In short, the son of an emperor who sees how his father is about to hand over his reign, not to his own son, but to a man he trusts. In the Gladiator movie, the right-hand man was Maximus Decimus Meridius, but in the case of Iran, we're talking about Ibrahim. Now, how could Mojtaba have perpetrated the crime? Well, as his father is already very old, Mojtaba currently co-directs the office of the Supreme Leader. He is, so to speak, the current right-hand man. And remember, this is no trifling matter. Mojtaba is now de facto the direct commander of the Revolutionary Guard and the intelligence services. Do you see where this could be going? The idea is that with his power at the helm of the Supreme Office, he has hatched a plan to get rid of the president and main rival in the race for supreme leadership. Does this make sense? Well, yes, it makes sense, but whether it's true is another matter. After all, Mojtaba already has his father's trust. He is his right-hand man, and perhaps a gladiator-style plan is something more cinematic than reality. But hey, theories be damned. In any case, and with all that is known so far, it is most likely that the whole thing was an accident. Unforeseen events with helicopters, especially in poor visibility conditions, are common. For instance, there's the example of Kobe Bryant just a few years ago. But you know what they say, truth is stranger than fiction, and maybe in the next few days we will have more interesting information about it. What will happen then? On VisualPolitik, we will be watching closely. So at this point, as always, let's get the debate started. Do you think that Ibrahim Raisi's death was an accident or an attack? If it was an attack, was it an attack by Israel, by someone inside Iran itself, or perhaps by a third party such as the US? You can leave your answers in the comments, give us a like if you like the video, and above all, subscribe to the channel to stay tuned to all the news. Thank you very much for watching, all the best, see you next time.